Lowe's knows how to help you get the most out of your store run. That's why members save more with My Lowe's Rewards. Earn points towards My Lowe's money on eligible purchases. Get access to member-only deals and free member gifts. Plus, unlock free standard shipping when you reach Silver Key status. So what are you waiting for? Join for free today. Lowe's. We help. You save. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
This episode is brought to you by Nerds Gummy Clusters, the sweet treat that always elevates the vibe. With a sweet gummy surrounded with tangy, crunchy nerds, every bite of Nerds Gummy Clusters brings you a whole new world of flavor. Whether it's game night, on the way to a concert, or kicking back with your crew, unleash your senses with Nerds Gummy Clusters.
Hello, fellow gamers, and welcome to the Video Gamers Podcast. Tales of Iron 2 is a gritty, dark, fun, and challenging game with a beautiful art style. But how did these rat heroes and frog villains come to be? As gamers, we often wonder, who thought of this? And today we're going to find out about that and a whole lot more about the game. But first, some introductions are in order. I am your host, Josh, and joining me, he may have big ears and he's hairy, but he's no rat. It's Ryan.
Always with the ears, man. Always with the. At least you didn't call me Dumbo.
I actually looked this up. There is a Dumbo rat. I was looking up different species of rats before the show, and literally there's a Dumbo rat. And then I went, I don't think anybody is going to know what I'm referencing there. So I just went with the
all right,
classic
just give me
ears, right?
Give me a sword. Give me a sword. I'm ready to go.
Oh, man. And joining us, he's the guy that set the world record for most mentions of Tales of Iron 2 over a span of 6 months. It's AceofShame.
You know, I'm starting to wonder if maybe I should have got an advertisement cut at some point. Like,
it's like, write me in.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I got people going in left and right at one point.
Hey, I know you got John to pick this game up, and then John fell in love with it. So that's at least one extra sale right there for Ace. So, and joining us, he's the man who helped found Oddbug Studios, the splinter to our Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the one, the only, Jack Bennett.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. It's fun to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us, Jack. So for everybody that is listening, Jack is one of the co-founders of Oddbug Studios, the fine men and women that brought us Tales of Iron and Tales of Iron 2. Tales of Iron 2 just released in the last week or so, and we are going to be diving into all things related to that. So Jack, thank you so much for giving your time to join us today.
No worries, I love being here. I spend my life talking about Tales of Iron, so I got to enjoy it.
Yes, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So we just wanted to start off by saying congratulations on the release and the success of Tales of Iron 2. We can only imagine what that anticipation, the excitement, and probably the anxiety that goes into working so hard on a game and then finally just saying, here you go, world, it's ready for you. So, I mean, as gamers, we'd love a little bit more insight into that. So if you could, what's that like, man? Is it scary? Is it exciting? Like, do you sleep like the night before the game releases? Like, what is that like for you?
It's a strange one because like our studio's all remote, right? So we're not in an office of like we're all there like stressing and nervous. We're just there at home, and the game's done like 2-3 weeks because you have to send it off to all platforms. So you're basically just done with it. So until that actual day beforehand, you're like it's out of my hands. You hear it kind of, oh, it's gone off to journalists and journalists are reviewing it now, and you get these bits of it, but there's like almost like a month period where you're just waiting. You're just there waiting for it to, for the day. So like, like it's nerve wracking the day before, but before that it's kind of just a numbness. You're like, I'm done with it. There's no more I can do. I've just got to wait until that moment and see how people react. But then when it comes out, that's the big like, oof, you don't know what's going on. You're just waiting for those first reviews to come in. You're waiting for people to like tweet about it and that sort of stuff. So it's like a roller coaster of emotions that day.
Well, I guess this is a really good question. It's not something that I think we think of a whole lot. As gamers, we absolutely leave reviews for games, and we tout games that we love, like Ace is, like I said, we joke, but this is absolutely true. He's been telling our community for months and months and months how excited he is for this game. I mean, from the time it was announced to, up to the release, and then after the release, playing it and things like that. So it's like, gamers absolutely will tell people when something is great. But what we also tend to do is tell people when we don't like something, and so you mentioned kind of that preview period where you send the game out to people and say, hey, this is play the game. And then there's a review embargo usually. And then, people get to kind of start saying, well, here's what I think about the game. What is that like for you guys? I mean, you can't please everybody, and so, you're going to see the good reviews that you go, yeah, we did it, man. Like, this is great. People are loving this. But like, how do you handle the negative reviews at the same time?
Yeah. I mean, it's whenever you create anything, whether it's games or music or film, whatever, you probably get reviews on the podcast as well. There's always going to be there's always going to be someone that doesn't like something about something. Like you say, you're never going to please everyone. But as developers, that negative feedback is actually quite useful to us because we can see what maybe we can patch in and fix later at a later date, or things that people haven't enjoyed that we can move away from in other games going forward. So although the negative reviews on the day are like a knife in the heart and they're not enjoyable to read, they're actually very useful. So once the emotion's gone out of it and you come back to it like in a couple of weeks' time and you read through it, it's good to get that feedback. And because positive reviews are great to hear, obviously, but most of the time we get so many of the positive reviews, we know what the good stuff is. It's getting the negative reviews, and like, again, negative reviews can sometimes be a load of swear words and nothing that you actually could get useful. But negative reviews that actually explain what they didn't like and what they found hard or difficult or different, that's really useful to us as developers.
Yeah, we get a look at that. I mean, as a podcast, like you said, we get reviews, and it's, the positive reviews make you feel good about what you're doing, but sometimes that constructive criticism, I'll call it, is how you get better. Like you said, if somebody's just trashing it, okay, maybe it's not for you at that point, but yeah, I do think that there's definitely some feedback that goes along with that. It's got to be tough as a studio to filter out some of that noise, though, to say, listen, everybody's got an opinion on something, but this is our vision. This is what we want to move forward with. Maybe it's not for everybody, but I think that I don't know how you guys filter out like gamers saying, hey, you should do this. No, you should do this. What if you guys did this instead?
Well, like we're at Souls-like, so we kind of expect quite a lot of that rage-induced negative. I can see myself in that situation, being like, "This is broken. They've done this deliberately. It's so unfair." Like just when you're hitting your head against that wall. So I understand where that point comes from, but getting enough negative reviews together, you can start to pinpoint like, this is a recurring theme. This is something that whether they've liked something and liked something different, they've both said that they don't like this, and this is something that we can focus on. And then depending on how core it is to the gameplay loop, it's something we can work on and patch and update.
Yeah. Jeez. Yeah. What is that process like? Like the game's been out for, I think, a little over almost 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks by the time this episode releases. But, you talked about the kind of calm before the storm leading up to the release where you guys kind of go, we've done everything we can do. And then it releases to the world. I'm sure there's just a flood of activity, talking with us right now, about like saying, hey, we've got to like promote the game, and looking at those sorts of things, the response to the game and all of that goes with that. But now that we're kind of 2 weeks later, I think as gamers, again, we think, well, they're just spending their time fixing bugs at this point. It's all about the bug fixes and that kind of stuff, that kind of immediate response to the release of a game. But is there more than that? Like, you know, I imagine there's some PR work, obviously, because you want people to know about the game and to tell their friends about the game and stuff like that. But where does the attention turn kind of within that 2 weeks to maybe a month post-release?
You see where it is. He's sick.
Yeah,
you saw what it did to him. That's what it did to him.
And celebrating. That's what it was. No, like you say, a good portion of it goes to bug fixing. Like, no matter how hard we test a game, there's 5 of us, and I think the QA team is probably another. That's 10 people playing a 15 to 20 hour game. Literally, day one, there was a bug that people were getting that we'd never seen before that opened an end game crypt within like 2 hours of the game starting.
Oh no!
So literally bugs coming out that you're, with all of the best intentions we've tried to find, they just happen because once you go from 10 people playing it to thousands of people playing it,
right?
It's just the law of averages. You know, you're eventually going to get something that we've never seen. So yeah, a good portion of it goes to bug fixing, just to like stabilize it and make sure we're not, because again, like we've briefly touched on, Steam is driven by reviews, right? So like if you're not in that very positive, you're disappearing into the annals of Steam, disappeared, gone. So you want to be in that 80% and above. So you want to fix those bugs as quick as possible to keep that very positive review.
So that's actually something really interesting. I don't think I didn't realize this anyway. And obviously, you know, review scores matter, but is there actually like a threshold where you go, hey, as long as we're over this number, we're good? I mean, obviously everybody wants to be in the, you know, that 97% overwhelmingly positive kind of thing, but that's a fantastic like thought there. Is 80% kind of as long as we're above this, like we're good, but if we're under that, oh no.
Steam shoots you down.
Yeah, I mean, like there's like, you know, it's not a perfect science, but as long as you're in that mostly positive, which I think is 80% of stuff, then that is kind of what keeps you popping up for people and keeps you in the algorithm space. There's 8 out of 10s galore on Steam. If you're not an 8 out of 10, then you're something else, you know, you're not there. So
right.
You're better off, or you aim for the stars, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, going back to that point, we fix those bugs to try and keep that good percentage. Then other things are like quality of life. So people, for example, with Tales of Iron 2, people were saying they would like to scale the subtitles because sometimes in different languages the subtitles were slightly too big or covered areas that they didn't want it to cover. So, you know, we can add in quality of life things like that. A big percentage of it goes to, you know, PR stuff, like you say, like talking, to podcasts, journalists, whatever. And I mean, I say that lightly, but there's 5 of us on the team. So me being here, it's a fifth of the team just gone. Yeah. So it's I imagine on a AAA game, it's like, yeah, it does nothing, but in reality, it's different. And then obviously the rest of the time is spent on what's next, which is, you know, that as an indie dev, that is, you're in that precipice, you know, like your game's doing well, but you might not have got you don't get paid out straight away from your royalties because, you know, business, that's how business works. And then, so you're in that bit where there's no money coming in and you need to be making something so that you can get money coming in to keep everything ticking over nicely. So that's the next stage is like, oh, Tales of Iron 2, love it, done. Here's what we're making next.
That's awesome.
Jeez, that's wild. And then kudos to you guys. Five-man team to make what you've created is pretty stellar.
That's always incredible to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
that's
like when you break that down, there's 5 of us, which is like, one is like a combat designer, character designer, animator. Then there's environment artist, lighting. Then there's 2 coders, and then there's me doing like level design, quest design, story writing, production. And then we have a team in Italy of 3 guys that just come in and do the audio with us, but they're like a separate team of themselves.
Nice, man.
So, I mean, one thing we love to do is kind of get that, who is the dev, who is the person behind the game? You know, what kind of makes them tick? Have you always been a gamer? Are you a gamer? Is there, you know, something that's kind of what brought you into this world?
Yeah, I mean, like I've had every Nintendo console that's ever been created.
Yes.
That was my in. Was like from NES to Switch, I've had everything, So and I mean, I would argue that Nintendo is the best entrance into gaming because it always teaches you the fundamentals first. You're not gonna Mario will give you everything you need to know to go onto any game. So.
Yeah. It's true. The 2 buttons. You start with those 2 buttons and then you go from there. Now we got 12 button mice and keyboards and all this stuff now.
Yeah.
So do you have like a favorite game that you've played over the last few years?
I mean, there's loads of games that I've played and loved, but like I'd say I'd break it down into like AAA and indie games because they're 2 different worlds, So,
absolutely.
Like in indie space, the game I always come back to is Kingdom 2 Crowns. I love that game. It's so simple. It's like a 2D tower defense game, basically.
Oh, I love tower defense.
But it's like, have you guys played it? Have you seen it?
No, I've never heard
but
of
now
this
you got me
one.
interested.
You got me interested.
So it's published by Raw Fury. It's like you build like a little village side on, and you have to venture out to bring villagers back to become towers and that sort of thing. And then every night you get attacked. So you're like trying to build out your village whilst you're getting attacked. It's super simple, but it's like that game I can jump into and play like 30 minutes and get my hit. And, I'm done.
Yeah.
I mean, like carrying on down that line, I like Hades as well. Like I've been playing a lot of Hades as well. Yeah, because another game that still I've not beaten it, but
I haven't either, and I've played it a lot, and I've just never beaten that final fight, man. I don't know what it is.
I get to Hades like I've been there like 3 times now, and every time he just wipes the floor with me. I'm like, I know I'm going to do it someday, but I might be 80.
I'm Elden Lord. I've beaten Millennia, and I can't beat Hades, man. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, so I'd say they were like the indies that I keep coming back to because they give me that that hit of game when I finish work and I can just play it and go to bed and I've got my little hit out of it. But in the AAA space, I'd say God of War's probably been my God of War's like
yes.
both of them.
Is it something about us bald bearded men that relate to Kratos? Because God of War is one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah, if you can see back there, he's got the Blades of Chaos right behind him.
yeah, up on the wall, nice.
Yeah,
I'd say like with God of War, it was like I played the originals back in the day, on PlayStation 2 and that. But this just felt like that maturing of the IP. It was a whole new world, a whole new angle on the game, and it just blends gameplay and story so well. Like those characters you're attached to in a completely different way. Yeah, that game I love, and that was an influence on us. Like, obviously, God of War uses the tails on attacks. The reds, the yellows, the whites.
Oh yeah,
That's where we got it from for Tales of Iron because we was like, love that combat. So,
are you a Souls-like fan?
Yeah, I like Souls-like. Like I play what do you call it? Sword and Sanctuary. Loved Sword and Sanctuary.
I love that one.
Yeah, that one I played a lot with. Like when we used to have an office, we played Sword and Sanctuary a lot. I've played Dark Souls, but I'm not great at them. That's what I mean. Where our team is like diverse in the way we like games. So like I come into games for the story aspect of it. I like challenging combat, but I'm not there for like the hardest of hard hitting my head against a wall. Whereas other members of the team are there for that, and they couldn't give a rat's about the story.
That's exactly how Josh and myself are. That's part of the reason I loved God of War so much. You still had that combat, but the story was so engaging, and you felt a part of that world. And Josh will just go fight Millennia 400 times and have just as much fun, which I can't do.
You can't put somebody in front of me and then say you can't beat this guy, because it's like it just drives me, man. It's like I will absolutely beat this guy. But then again, I just said I never beat Hades, so now I know what I'm doing later tonight.
You got this, Josh. You can beat Hades.
So, Jack, we want to move a little bit into kind of what it's like to be a game designer, but I do have one more question on the gaming front for you. Now, we know that you've had your hands full, so if you don't have an answer for this one, that's okay. But is there a game coming out this year that you have on your radar that you were just like, man, I cannot wait to get my hands on this game?
Yeah, Monster Hunter.
Monster Hunter Wilds? We've seen that a lot. Yeah.
End of the month is going to be pretty sweet, yeah.
Yeah, we've seen that a lot. It's weird because I played Monster Hunter World, was my first kind of foray into the Monster Hunter games, and I love those boss fights. Like that, the stalking them and tracking them, and then the seeing them and the engagement and stuff like that is second to none. I had a hard time with like all the subsystems there. I felt like there was 50 different subsystems in the game. And it's like with the pace that we have to cover games, sometimes it's like, I don't have the time or patience to learn all that, but Monster Hunter Wilds looks really good.
Well, the crazy thing that I like about Monster Hunter is it feels, I know it's a AAA game, but it feels that 30 minutes. I'll go in, do a hunt, kill this thing. Nice one. It gives me that little loop that I can just play and put it down. Whereas like God of War does not give me that. God of War is like, I need to know exactly what's going on. Why? So I've got to play through for hours,
I love, a good 2-3 hour gaming session, but there's something to be said for a game that you can just pop in for 20-30 minutes, play a little bit. Like you said, get that hit and then go out,
Yeah. Well, when you're working late nights and you're like, I haven't got the time to put in and I won't remember what Kratos has just said.
Yeah.
I'll be playing.
Death can have me when it earns me.
Yeah, it's funny. I think as we get older, especially, it becomes do I have 2 or 3 hours to dedicate to this, or do I have 30 minutes to dedicate to this? And more often than not, it's like, I have 30 minutes, so I'm going to play this game versus this one.
Exactly,
there's still that awesome, like, I'm setting aside a Saturday to really dive into this game kind of thing. But that's more often the rarity nowadays than it is like this is my standard here. So. Yeah. So, Jack, one of the things that we've been doing lately is kind of a series on the people behind the games. We've talked to voice actors, animators, you as a game designer now and a co-founder for a studio. And so we kind of love that kind of peek behind the curtain. Because I think, again, as gamers, we romanticize a lot of these things and we have like a certain thinking about what a lot of these jobs are like in the industry. But more often than not, we find out it's not, yes, it can be a dream job, but it also is work and that comes at a cost. And not every day is a great day at work and things like that. So can you give us a rundown on, and this doesn't have to be super specific if it doesn't need to be, but like, what is being a lead designer like? Like when it comes to creating a video game, like what is your position like in that? What do you kind of oversee or kind of do on a day-to-day basis? Yeah.
So I'll caveat this with, we're an indie team that's never worked in a AAA studio, so the way we do it is not necessarily the correct way.
I love that, though. That's what I want to know. Like, that's what awesome. Is it like? Yeah, a team of 5 people. Like, what's that like?
Like, we literally all came out of university and just started a studio, so we've never had any, like, industry experience, I
love that.
I love it. It's real.
Yeah, so I would say my role specifically is, like, I'm the person that sews everything together. Like, we have one person making the environments, we have one person doing the characters and getting the combat working. So then I come along and I've written this story and I make the quests and I make the levels and I plot their artwork in here and I put their character in here and I get that all working. And then Dan then comes through and does like the balance pass on top of that. So I would say I'm the person that sews it together, but that's an abstract way of saying it. So like, the easiest way to explain what like my day to day is like, like a flow chart, like you come in, yes or no, this option.
Yeah.
That's what I look at like 20 hours a day. Basically is that. And like, if I tried to explain, if somebody had to come in and do my job, it would be like, right, here's the layers of the onion that is this game. Because the way that Tales of Iron works is like, every encounter is an encounter graph. So there's a graph saying this guy turns on and does this attack. And then once you killed him, this happens. Once you kill him, this happens. Quest complete. Encounter complete. Then above that, there is a quest graph that says once this encounter is completed, this encounter should turn on. Then you pick up this item and blah, 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 blah. Once that's done, this quest is complete. And then above that, there is a game graph that says, once this quest is complete, these things turn on and these things turn off. And then there's another quest here, another quest here. And then once that's done, that's game complete. And then for Tales of Iron 2, there was another graph on top of that said, when this monster's been defeated, it will appear in this part of the world. Once this so there was like 4 layers of depth to this. I mean, can I share at my screen and I can take you into?
I'd love to see this. I have a feeling it's going to look like the world's biggest bush, like just branching, paths here. But
brain is melting already.
It's funny because I think I know what you're talking about with these kind of branching, if this then that things. But it's like looking into the Matrix.
Yeah.
How it leads so far along to something else. That's
wow.
So this is just the quest graph for the opening quest of Tales of Iron 2.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so listeners, it's like a highway of almost like text bars that look like circuit boards of like a computer.
Yeah.
It's just flowing, stacked on stacked on stacked.
So wait, green square. Green square's got to be something good.
Yeah, that's collected items, yeah.
I know loot when I see it.
So that is like just the one graph, but then each of these is an individual graph like that.
Oh my goodness.
That is a quest. And then on top of that, I mean, my PC might not open this right now whilst trying to stream it as well, because even when I'm not streaming, this graph is a laggy monstrosity, because this is the graph that's on top of all that says like each green square here is a quest, basically. So this is the graph on top of that sets up.
How do you keep this organized? Like, how do you? I feel like I would get so twisted up in knots and then be like, wait, where does this green line go again?
Yeah. So when I started game development, I had hair down past my bum. And so take from that what you want to.
Oh, wow.
Man,
whilst
that's impressive, man.
Whilst I'm sharing my screen, something that you might find interesting. This is not my role, but it's an interesting way that I think we develop games that not a lot of people do develop games in that way. It's because our games are all like 2D, right? They're all side scrolling.
Right.
And then they have that intense like parallax of moving assets and that sort of thing. So the way that works is every single asset in the game is actually an individual piece, an individual asset that's placed in the Z. So,
my gosh.
Wow. So for the listeners, we're getting a look at a 2D screen right now that is being zoomed in and rotated to actually show you the layers of depth. Even though it's 2D, it's like you have the foreground, the background, and you can place items and things like that from anywhere in the foreground all the way to the back.
Cool.
So it's 2D, but it's not 2D. It's really 3D.
It's like a shadow box, like where you can see look straight on.
Reference.
I was going to say pop-up book.
There's all the layers behind it that stack up and then create that level. That is so awesome to see.
Yeah, so like
Jack, this is great.
That's all like like you've seen there, individual 2D assets, but then like we, I don't know if I can show it. I don't know if I can find it, but basically what we do in the game is, like here, what I'm showing you is the main hub. This is the area you keep coming back to over and over again. So we do all sorts of crazy things where we're like switching out assets in here. Things are getting destroyed. We're changing time of day. So although it looks like a single individual scene, we're actually, smashing pieces up and adding assets in, and so it gets pretty hectic in there.
Wow. This is literally like, imagine if somebody took 7 layers, and then you put them together and you look at them from one angle and they look like they're 2D, but there's actually 7 layers there. And then you can actually put assets and things on, between any of those layers. So this is awesome, man, because I've never seen this. I always just thought 2D game. And we see this a lot more nowadays, right? Where you're seeing these kind of 2D games that have depth to them at the same time. And I personally, I love that style because I think it really enhances that 2D aspect. But it's really cool to kind of get that glimpse, like we said, behind the curtain. I had no idea that this is what a game looked like, for somebody that's actually working on it, which is awesome.
And then that this would be more part of my job is I've built all of these. When you look at what I do, it's a lot less interesting to see. That's what I see most of the time. is that
a door? There's just a picture of a door right there.
So that's what I see most of the time. But then I hook all these levels up, and you set characters in them and that sort of thing. Because like something we do that is, again, I don't know if every player does this, but we actually animate within Unity. a lot of studios will probably animate outside of Unity, but we rig everything and animate within the software. So like,
right.
For example, this is Arlo, the main character, and here with him, we can do whatever we want to with moving him around and stuff now. So everything is in this, this actual, within Unity, basically.
That is awesome.
Wow, that is so neat. Yeah, so he's got the main character here, and he's kind of making him dance and do a jig right now. But that's so interesting to see how that once that character's created, then you can do all the effects, this way.
Yeah, well, I mean, like it's the same thing with him, right? Like we have to crush it down a little bit, but he is all like individual, separate pieces that are like 2D assets that we've squished down. Let me see if I can.
This is really cool.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, we're geeking out right now.
If I turn up his body, you can see what he is underneath,
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. I don't know. There's like
layers on layers, man.
Wow,
Look at this.
His head's separate, so you can put different hairs and things on him. It's all.
And so, is this how you? Because this is always really neat. And one of the things I love in a game is when you get gear, that the gear is reflected on your character, right? I don't know why. It's like maybe it's just my brain, but I hate it when I'm playing a game where it's like I get a new fancy piece of armor or something, and then it's like, but it doesn't show up. And then it's like, well, but that kind of takes away from it, man. I want to see it on my guy.
Yeah.
And so this kind of design is what allows you to place other assets like on a character design at that point.
Yeah. I mean, with Tales of Iron 2, I think there's close to 1,000 individual weapons, armors, and helmets and things. Yeah. There's loads of these.
That's awesome. So, Jack, man, I could look at this stuff forever because this is
That's
really, really
incredible,
cool.
man. That's awesome. I love that.
I do want to kind of talk about, because you're in the unique position, and we to be able to chat with you about this is, not only are you a game designer, but you're also a co-founder of a studio.
Yeah.
And I think that's just fascinating. As gamers, we hear news stories about, hey, so-and-so left this company to go found their own studio, and they're bringing a team of people, and, they're gonna, this is gonna feel like a classic game that everybody loves or something like that. But, and then sadly, we also hear about the closure of a lot of studios as well, which, as gamers, we hate. Like, legitimately, it sucks to hear that things didn't work out for people and stuff like that. And I know that you mentioned that the 5 of you kind of came out of university. But like, how does one go about founding a studio? Like, did you guys all just sit around and say, one night having beers together or something and say, we should make a game?
Yeah, they looked over next to the campfire and they went, that's an odd bug. That's how an odd bug's do.
Say that again.
So I wish it was that simple. So yeah, me, Dan, and Martin, we all went to university together, and then Matt and Nathan, the 2 coders, they went to university together at a separate university. But me, Dan, and Martin, we graduated, and then there was a competition in Scotland called Dare to be Digital, which is like recent graduates or last year students go there, and they have like 2 months, you make a game, and then at the end of it, like people from industry come around and view and mark them and give you awards and that. So we made a little random game there, and then people from Sony XDev actually came and looked at it, and they was like, we don't like this game, but we want to see what else is from you. And Dan had his final major project from uni, which was called The Lost Bear. And then they really liked that, and they gave us funding for that. So we made a demo in 6 months for The Lost Bear, which was going to be a 2D cinematic platformer. Then that got picked up, and then for a series of events, which is long and sad and miserable, it became a 2D VR platformer that we made in like a year and a bit. And then that came out, and then from there we got funding for Tales of Iron, and it just kind of like snowballed on from there. So yeah, it's a tough road to walk if you. I guess it's the same as every business though. It's like making the continuous supply of money is hard to come across.
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply. USAA.
This episode is brought to you by Abercrombie. There's nothing better than the perfect jean and going out top combo, or an outfit that perfectly matches your plans. Abercrombie's relaxed jean goes with every occasion. Date nights with something lace or daytime with a cozy sweater. And their barrel jean will surprise you. It's the trend that will become a staple in your wardrobe. Abercrombie denim comes in tons of rises, fits, and washes. Find your perfect pair online or in store.
All right, so let's get into Tales of Iron 2 itself. And this is where I know Ace has a lot of questions for you guys, because like I said, he has 100%ed the game. He's been talking about this game since you guys first announced it. He played Tales of Iron 1, was a huge fan of that. I'm not exaggerating when I say this was one of his most anticipated releases of the year. And so we're gonna kind of hand it over to Ace a little bit to kind of just learn a little bit more about some of the ins and outs of the game itself. So Ace, I know you got a lot of questions, and don't worry, we'll let you ask about the were-owl fight a little bit later. What's something that you want to know about the game itself, or a question there?
Well, like you said, we'll get to the were-owl fight. I will want to know what hurt you, Jack. But I'd like to know what was your favorite boss fight in Tales of Iron 2?
Personally, I think the bit that's really cool about Tales of Iron 2 is that when you come back to the rabbits and the necromancer's there and he brings back the leader of the rabbits, and you have to fight that first. I like that bit from a story perspective. I think that's really cool and fun. But I think actual combat wise, I really like the spider. I think the difference of being able to swing around and he puts the poison out, but then he digs and comes up. I think the spider's quite a unique fight, and you think you get him quite early on. But I also quite like the chameleon as well. The sneaking around.
Yeah, he was cool too. I was
answers all of them. All of them is.
I was gonna say I was a fan of pretty much any boss from Short Tongue's quest line. They were all really fun.
Yeah. The ending of that as well. So did you get the two references? We did the Newt Alorian, they were meant to be Jabba the Hutt and the
I love the Mandalorian. That. I thought that was so cool, man.
That is a cool storyline. Oh. Yeah, and that's the bit where it is actually a fully unique boss to the side quest as well, which is enjoyable.
Oh, dude, it was so cool. I loved every bit of that. So you guys are fans of rats, you like rats.
Yeah.
How do y'all feel about the fact you animate them getting horribly slaughtered?
Dismembered and destroyed.
I gotta know, man. How's that make you feel?
I mean, I guess in the same way, I hope the people that George R. R. Martin likes humans, but he still cuts them up and poisons them and that sort of thing. I hope it's a similar feeling. I hope he's not angry about it. But no, we try and keep it fairly cartoonish in the murders and the killing. But yeah, that is a really interesting point about Tales of Iron, because I think a lot of people see it and oh, this is so cute, it's so lovely, it's like Redwall, and then they start playing it and you're chopping the heads off frogs or stabbing bats through the stomach. That's quite a nice and interesting moment where people are oh, this is not what I was expecting.
That's definitely what I remember from the first game. I was like, oh, it's that kind of game.
Yeah.
Well, when we showed the game at Gamescom, and because of German rules, you're not allowed, if it's an 18 or a 16 plus, you're not allowed to have screens facing out because kids walking around.
Yeah.
So, because Tales of Iron 2 is a 16 plus, we had all the screens coming in and parents be coming up just why can't the kids come in and play this? It's well, actually, there's a lot of decapitation, there's a lot of horrible things going on here. That's why they can't come in, yeah.
Oh man, that's funny. Ace, anything you want to know more about the were-owl fight before we move on?
Not quite the were-owl fight. I do want to know, what made you guys change protagonist from the first game to this one?
So with Tales of Iron, we don't see it as a single game. We don't see it as oh, this is the Tales of Iron games. We're seeing it as a world, as a universe. Mm-hmm. Like I just said about Game of Thrones, we want to show all of the perspectives of that world, and just to constantly show Reggie and he's coming from a super privileged position in life, to see that perspective every time is not as interesting as seeing how Arlo maybe approaches it, or how another person would approach it from a different angle, and to see how the different parts of the world then kind of connect with each other. To us, that was way more enjoyable than to be like, here's Reggie again, he's in the Crimson Keep, and there's something drawing him out of the Crimson Keep. Because, again, things that we really like to do is show, or something that's enjoyable about Tales of Iron is showing the different parts of the world, showing the different races. Because that's a great moment in Tales of Iron 1, right? When you're playing the game and suddenly these like Russian moles come out of nowhere with the electric and communism and that sort of thing.
I love them.
That was something we enjoyed in Tales of Iron 2, was being like, here's these owls that have got like a parliament and they make rules that they can't even meet, and like all of this sort of stuff. So like creating these small little civilizations and introducing you to them is like the really enjoyable part of it. And I think by showing different protagonists, you get to experience that in different ways, to like, oh, we know how Reggie's going to respond to this, and we know how, he's going to act in this situation. I think that's an enjoyable way. And in the future, it'll be interesting to see what happens if anything happens. Who knows? Who knows what the ending means? I don't know.
I have one more real quick, Josh. I want to, with obviously, you have the rats and rabbits and frogs. You've named all these different types of animals. Does using animals as the characters and the enemies lead to more almost creativity and your ability to kind of branch out and expand to just kind of wild, crazy places?
Yeah. So like when we first started creating Tales of Iron, we wanted to make like our own version of like the classic fantasy game, but we didn't want to be locked in with like, this is what a dwarf does, this is what a elf does. So we basically assign the races to the different types of animal, but then try and trade it around. So like the rats are the humans, right? They're the basic standard knights, castles, that sort of thing. Our version of dwarves was the moles, right? Yeah, they live underground and they dig, but they've got electricity. They've got an arena of like wrestlers that fight each other to the death. They've got this uniqueness to them. They are our dwarves, but they're not actually dwarves. Like,
yeah.
In Tales of Iron 2, the owls were meant to be our elves. Like, yes, they do have laws and are governed in a more civilized manner, but they also make rules that are completely against their own like instincts and nature and that sort of thing. So it's interesting to play within those different aspects. And like you say, giving animals gives us an easy way to make it feel different to the classic.
I love that. It just allows you to be more creative. It kind of takes away those barriers of saying we have to kind of stay within this groundwork, so to speak. And then now we can kind of do whatever we want, but we still have kind of a foundation, that we can reference if we need to. I think that's great. So one of the things in Tales of Iron 2, and you kind of mentioned this, is that you kind of look at this almost like a universe, right? And so when you're going, I should say, when you're planning the kind of story of Tales of Iron 2, you have Tales of Iron 1, it's set, it's canon, so to speak. Like, did you know what you want? Like, did you have an end in mind as far as like, okay, we want to get from point A to point B story wise. So, as long as we know this is where we want to be, we can figure out how to get there? Or is it more of like an evolving, like, here's the start of this story, let's see where this thing goes, and oh wow, we wound up here kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, we knew what we wanted to do. We knew like, we want this, and this is where we're going to start, this is where we're going to end, and this is what the middle is going to be. But like the bits that happen around that maybe change depending on mechanics, depending on things that we want to do, or bits that happen in the world. That changes as we're going along, but we always had plans for like, this is what the games are going to. We've even got plans of like what we'd like to do if there was like an animated series or a graphic novel. Like
I'd eat that up.
I know. Well, like without giving spoilers, like that end scene of the game.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of explaining that could happen between that and wherever the future begins. So that would be a nice space for like a little ranger situation, a little Aragorn situation maybe going on,
Yeah.
So that would be an interesting situation. So yeah, we had all these plans for like things that we want to do. It's just the minutiae of that changes slightly depending on other circumstances,
Oh, that's awesome. So like, speaking of, animated series and other kind of things you can go into, that all falls into the look of the game. I absolutely love the art style you guys decided to go with. It is something
so
that you don't see a lot, but when you see it and it's done the right way and it's done well, it's just kind of stands alone. What led you guys to kind of choose to design the game that way?
Yeah. So Martin, the environment artist, he's from the Czech Republic, or Czechia now, and their like big thing is like block printing. I mean, everywhere in the world does it, but they're quite well known for it. It's like, you carve the wood, you ink it up, and then you stamp it, and you get like an image from that. So that's why all of our artwork has like these black borders to it, like the thick black lines that cover everything. And because of that then led us down this fairy tale route, this storybook route. So that was kind of the concept of like the art direction of it. But then that informed other things, right? Like, we want a fairy tale sort of feel into the game. So we want as few words as possible to make sure that story's simple, but still like endearing to the player. So we only had a narrator, no animal like talks in words to each other. That also then led to the speech bubble situation where everything's trying to be like spoken through images rather than through text. So it kind of like led itself through, but that basis was like the block printing concept of the artwork. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, you guys did an amazing job. It's absolutely beautiful.
It is really beautiful. I have no artistic bones in my body, like at all. And it's funny because my wife and kids are all artists. So, and I just look at them and I'm like, I don't know how you guys do this.
How do you do that?
So I'm always super impressed when I see something. And then I just go like, how did somebody's brain just like poof this into existence? It absolutely baffles me. But yeah, I got to give you guys credit, man. The art style in this game is beautiful. I mean, it's one of those things, especially with indie games, we do see a lot more of like variety of art styles and stuff like that. But I am a huge fan of the art style that you guys have come up with in this. It really just is impressive to me. I like that it has this kind of dark nature to it, but there's so much detail in it as well. Like when you take the time to actually look at it also. So I mean, kudos to all of you guys for that, because it's very impressive. So that kind of leads us into, you can have an amazing looking game. You can have a game with an incredible story, but if playing the game isn't fun, then you're kind of in a tough place. And so, with Tales of Iron 2, the combat, you guys have kind of upped the combat and the gameplay for this. And I think that's one of the things that really stands out with Tales of Iron 2 as far as Tales of Iron 1 is that it really just feels much more refined and expanded, especially with like the elemental system and stuff like that. Like, what's the process on, like, when you go from, Tales of Iron 1 to Tales of Iron 2, how do you come up with that? How are we going to improve the gameplay? Like, do you guys sit there with a whiteboard and just say, it'd be really cool if we had this, and if a boss fight, if they had this mechanic, like that would be really fun. I mean, you mentioned that you guys are gamers, so I imagine you kind of have that ability to say, what's fun for us? I
mean, it initially starts, we was in a unique situation because with Tales of Iron 2, we had all the feedback from Tales of Iron 1. So we had people that said, I like this about the combat, or I don't like this about the combat, or I'd like this to happen or that to happen. So we knew like people loved the basis of the combat. They just wanted it to be like a deeper a deeper form of combat, not just like responding to, like tells basically. So we knew we needed to go deeper with that. So it was a way of us being like, how can we keep the basis of this, but make it a more interesting system, basically. So yeah, that then comes down to like, we're a gamer, so we're like, okay, what can we relate this to? And that kind of led us down that Monster Hunter sort of elemental system of like, enemies have weaknesses and resistances. You have weaknesses and resistances depending on the armors you're wearing. And that felt like a natural fit to us, where like, you are fighting these big creatures, but you can give yourself this buff by practicing ahead. And that kind of lent itself, because we're big fans of The Witcher as well, that lent itself into The Witcher, with the bestiary and the poisons and all of that sort of thing. So it kind of just became this like, we could take this from here and this from here and kind of merge it into what we want for our combat system, which will then in turn fix this feedback that we've got of like, people want a deeper system.
So something I wanted to ask about was you have a little crossover armor in there for Lords of the Fallen. How did you guys land on that?
Yeah, so United Label is actually owned by CI Games. CI Games make Lords of the Fallen, so they're basically our publisher once removed.
Oh, okay. All right.
So it was just like in-house stuff. Basically, we were we're friendly, I guess. It's the
super
answer
cool
to
thing
that.
to see. It was like,
That's kinda cool.
yeah.
It's almost like an Easter egg in a way,
Yeah.
you know, and I know like gamers love just that kind of discovery. And when you notice it, you notice it. And if you don't, there's, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, hey, this doesn't affect anything but for the people that see it, this is a nice little thing. And it kind of jumps out at them.
Yeah. If we had the time, it would have been nice to go and go into the Umbra and fight some monster from the Lord of the Fallen to get the armor piece. But just didn't have the time for that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And speaking of time too, I just got one more. Like from day one when it starts and you're like, okay, we're making Tales of Iron 2. Is it just nonstop crunch time the whole way through? Is it that the pressure's on, or is it kind of ups and down and lulls as you kind of develop things, or how does that whole kind of bird's eye view process look?
I would say when you're starting to develop the game, you're in that concept phase of like, this is what we'd like to do. That tends to be less crunch intensive because you can only squeeze the lemon so much and there's no lemon juice left,
Right.
So we have to take some breaks and hide away in the darkness and come back. So that's less intensive. But when you're sat there and it's like, I've got to get this level made, I've got to get this quest done today in order for people to be able to play it and test it and see what they think of it, that's when it becomes not more crunch, but more intense, the amount of work you're doing, because you've got deadlines that are more structured. Whereas, when you're in the concept phase, you might spend 2 days talking about a mechanic, and then the next day you're like, actually, this isn't going to work. It's wasted time. That you're not going to get everything right straight away. So that initial period is a lot looser and free flowing, I'd say.
That's awesome.
I feel like that's the fun period. I don't know why, but my brain goes, the coming up with the concepts and the ideas is like this is where a lot of the excitement is, this kind of like, oh, this would be great, man, if we're going to have this. And I love that you mentioned, like, sometimes you go, nope, that's not going to work.
Yeah. 100%. Like, it's so hard to explain, but even this, you can be like, right, this is going to be our crafting system. And then even the smallest little minutest change over here, you're like, oh, well, this just removes everything that we've done over here. And that makes no sense. I mean, for us anyway, I think games are basically a house of cards. Designs are a house of cards, and the minute you move this card, this all falls down. You just got to make sure you're putting bits in the right place the whole way through.
Yeah. Well, Jack, this has been awesome, man. I mean, number one, this has been a blast to just talk to you, kind of get an idea of what this is like. I personally learned a lot today, which I think is fascinating. Yeah. I'm sure our listeners are going to love this as well. So really just wanted to thank you again for taking time out of your day to hop on with us and hang out with the guys and talk, gaming and Tales of Iron 2. I mean, especially, us getting to know you a little bit more as well. So, before we go, we kind of touched on this, but, we did mention rats and frogs. Are you really just that much of a fan of rats that when you guys went, hey, we got to have something that this is what we went with? And did you have to sell that to your 4 partners, or was this just everybody was in right away? They're like, yes, we're doing rats and frogs.
So all of the rats in Tales of Iron 1 are based on Dan's actual pet rats. They were real rats.
Oh my God.
I love that so much.
Cool. That's so cool.
So they're actual real rats, and they had names, and their characters are kind of loosely based on their real life characters. So it was less of a I need to sell the rats to people. It was more like, what are we putting these rats in?
Yeah.
It was the concept. Yeah.
I love it.
He shows up to the office. He's like, all right, guys, hear me out. Hear me out.
Rats.
I mean, it was more of he turns up to the office and throws rats around. And
Fight, battle.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, listen, once again, thank you for your time. For everybody out there, we preach this all the time. Support indie developers. You can tell the passion that you guys have for this. You can tell that you love just gaming in general. Obviously there's a business side of things brings to any business, but we always say that indie devs are the passion, the creativity behind the industry, and support indie devs. Tales of Iron 2 is an awesome game. I mean, it's one of those things where we have seen many people in our community talking about it. Ace, maybe more so than others, but again, our partner John has picked it up and played through it and had nothing but good things to say. So for everybody out there, take a look at this. Tales of Iron 2, Oddbug Studios. Support the devs that are doing the good work in the world. So thank you, Jack, and to everybody else at Oddbug Studio for just taking, you guys gave your lives or parts of your lives to making this game so that as gamers, we can have that enjoyment as well. So just thank you from all of us for what you guys do. And again, for taking time to hop on the show with us as well. So
no, thank you for talking about it. It's equally us making it and no one talking about it is, this is the other side of the coin. So
right.
Glad that you're talking about it. Thanks for having us on.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been our pleasure. So, well, listen, everybody, that does it for this episode. Again, check out Tales of Iron 2. Support these guys. They are awesome. And that will do it for this episode. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And until next time, happy gaming.
See ya.
I will never forgive you for the Where Owl, Jack.
I made it especially for you. Yeah.